I was in the United States Army. It hit me in World War II. I was about 14 or 15 years old when I realized that I wanted to be a soldier. In July 24th, 1948, I was sworn in for 3 years. I actually grew up in the military. I was 19 and a half years old when I went in, but all I knew was farm. My dad was a farmer. His brothers and his dad were all farmers. So I grew up, I started picking cotton when I was 5 years old. And lived on the farm and enjoyed it very much. And then when I got old enough to really get out there and work, Dad taught me how to drive a tractor, and I drove a tractor until from about 15 years old to about 19 and a half, and that's when I joined the Army. I was sworn in St. Louis, Missouri, and shipped to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and stayed there a couple of weeks, and then they shipped about 320 of us down to Fort Bliss, Texas for basic training. And we were the first group to take basic training there since 1944. But there's not a moment that I didn't enjoy the Army. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was totally different from civilian life, I tell you. The conflict was that North Korea, they split Korea, I think in 1944. Split it at the 38th parallel. And on June 25th, 1950, the North Koreans bombed and came into South Korea to take it. But the division I was in, the 25th Infantry Division that I was attached to, left Japan, and they got there in 1950. I got there January 10th, 51, and they attached us to them. So my outfit, by joining 25th Infantry Division, we were involved in three major battles. I want to say that I was not a frontline shooter, but I was a frontline troubleshooter. I was a mechanic, and we had trucks and Jeeps and M16 half-tracks, and it kept us busy keeping them going, because everything we had was World War II trucks, everything. So as long as we keep the parts coming, we keep them going. But the terrain in Korea was so rough, so hilly, so mountainous, that once in a while they'd throw a track. And here we'd be right there on the front right with them, putting that track back on. So we were sacrificing our life if necessary. Since I was in the motor pool, I wasn't trained. Well, of course, through basic we were trained with the M1 rifle, but I wasn't trained anything special, except in early part of 49, they sent me from Fort Bliss, Texas to Fort Benning, Georgia for 8 weeks of mechanic school. That was the only specialized thing I got. I came home, and it took me a long time to make up my mind what I wanted to do. So I worked at a service station, and I helped on the farm, just whatever I could do while I was making up my mind to what I was going to do. But during that time, I got called to preach. But because it's called a forgotten war, I wear this a lot. It stopped where it started, but we won that war. And the little guy up there now don't like it, but we won that war. And they tell me now that South Korea is just booming because of the American troops that saved their part of the country. What do you do for recreation? I say, I work. I love to work. But of course, I'm retired now from public work. I just read the Bible most of the time. But I'm still pastoring a church. I've been pastoring that church for 18 years, but I've been pastoring for 54 years. You love life all the time, but when you go through that, and let me say again, I'm not a hero, but I was there on the front line, for almost a year. But you learn the value of life, because many of them lost their life. Many of them were wounded. I wasn't wounded or anything, but you learn the value of life, because every minute you really didn't know what was going to happen. And I thank the Lord for life. I love life, and it means more to me now than it ever did, and it has ever since I came home in '52. I did get a lot of mail, and I want to say that the home folks are really, really important to people overseas. That letter, you can't imagine what just a letter can do to you. And of course, I knew a lot of people, and I was getting a lot of mail. And when I was at Fort Bliss, I got 33 letters one day, and the next day they said, no need to go to mail call, because Phelps will get it all. Love life, love God, take a stand for their country wherever it's necessary and however it's necessary.